The 24 hours before my dad died, stage 4 lung cancer. He was in the ER and then the ICU, and we were unable to be with him because of hospital COVID rules. My mother, sister, and myself had been texting and calling him all day and got no response. My mother even called the hospital and spoke with one of his ICU nurses who said he was awake and communicating fine. He passed very quickly at 3:30 a.m. the next morning. We were allowed to be at his bedside, but by then he was no longer conscious, so we said our goodbyes and he was gone. Later that morning, while my mom slept, I was calling cremation services to schedule his body for pickup at the hospital and going through his bag of belongings the hospital had returned to us. His phone was in there and I wanted to read all our texts and take some comfort in my last words to him. I opened his phone and all our texts had not been read, not mine or my mom and sister's.
I thought this was so odd, but figured he must have been suffering so much he couldn't find the strength. I began to scroll through his apps, noticed a chat app I had vaguely heard of. I can't recall the name, but it essentially works like WhatsApp. I opened the app and saw a single contact with a female name. I started reading and realized my dad has been chatting with this girl hourly for the last 24 hours and as far back as I could scroll. He was calling her princess and telling her he loved her, and she was saying she was scared for him and wanted to know what was going on. Why was he in the ER, etc. I scrolled back enough to know that this was someone he was having at the very least. And Yvonne Stacy was contact with a female name. I started reading and realized my dad has been chatting with this girl hourly for the last 24 hours and as far back as I could scroll. He was calling her princess and telling her he loved her, and she was saying she was scared for him and wanted to know what was going on. Why was he in the ER, etc. I scrolled back enough to know that this was someone he was having at the very least an emotional affair with. My dad was 66 years old when he died and dating someone younger than his grandchildren, someone he chose to spend his last moments with and say his last goodbyes to. I hope it made him happy, but it was a shitty secret to live the rest of my life with. A secret that will forever overshadow my entire relationship with my dad, with no chance to ever speak to him about it. It's the one secret I wish I never found out. I was adopted and told a silly, magical story about my birth parents that most certainly did not seem true, even when I was a child. At 57, I learned I was the result of a college affair between a very seriously Jewish young man and a very Baptist young woman. She was rushed off to a home for wayward girls to give birth. He followed her there, many states away, begging her to keep me and live a life together. But their families both said absolutely not. Jewish people were not viewed as white in the mid-60s, and her family certainly did not want her marrying a non-white. Plus, she was a very committed Christian and did not want to convert to Judaism. So off I went into another family. I recently discovered 3 lovely half-siblings, and we are all pro or semi-pro musicians and get along well. I never got to meet my mother. She died a year before I searched. My father is out of the picture and wants to be left alone. And I'm fine with that. I'm grateful for the love he gave me. It was enough. Another person that was in my non-bio family was also adopted. She was older than me. She tracked down her mom later in life, too. She was in a hospital and had been since the day she was born. She was born holistically disabled, physical, mental, cognitive, learning, sensory, and was raped by an orderly, and she discovered she was the result. Endings to our searching are not always happy. She was my best friend of 7 years. We had literally been through it all together. I moved out of state with my now husband, but she convinced us both to move back to be closer with her after about a year. We had no real ties to the state we had tried out, so we said, screw it, let's go back. She's basically family. We were all so happy to be reunited. She was over almost every night for dinner. We all laughed and talked and had a blast. Best year of my life. And slowly she started trying to turn my husband and I against each other. Anytime we had an argument, like any couple does, she would text each of us about how right we were, trying to foster animosity between the two of us. With me, she started talking about how she had a plan B for us, that if my husband and I couldn't make it work, I could move in with her and we'd live happy lives together. With my husband, she started talking about her infertility issues and how she wanted to have a kid just like him. She just needed a sperm donor. This all happened at around the same time, and my husband and I compared texts and figured it out. She wanted to take a sperm and have a baby with me. When confronted about it, she refused to admit anything and started lashing out at both of us, at a point where she would show up unannounced, banging on the door, demanding a place in our home. It was so terrifying and panic-inducing that we ended up having to move and change our phone numbers. I guess it's so disturbing because I had never had a friend like her, only to find out that she cared about me, but in such an unhealthy and scary way. Yeah, that's my story. She and I are great now. My mom received birthday cards with money in them for years from her parents. She kept the cards with the money in them, saving to buy a piano sentimental reasons. My sister, who has repeatedly stolen from family members, found the collection of cards, money, and took them. My mom only wanted the cards back when she realized what happened. My sister denied everything. F you, Haley.
My grandfather beat someone to death. My dad was an only child, but my grandmother was once pregnant with my dad's younger brother. When she was 6 months pregnant, someone in construction equipment ran over the car she was driving and she lost the baby. While she was in the hospital, my grandfather beat someone to death. My dad was an only child, but my grandmother was once pregnant with my dad's younger brother. When she was 6 months pregnant, someone in construction equipment ran over the car she was driving and she lost the baby. While she was in the hospital, my grandfather found the guy and beat him to death. From what I understand, he was in jail for about a week before he was released. Apparently, he claimed temporary insanity due to the circumstances. I learned all this about 4 years ago when my brother was researching family history and asked my grandfather about it. I've always seen him as a nice little old man.
Found out after his death that my great uncle was a grand wizard in the KKK. Opened a chest in his attic with photos from rallies, lynchings, and cross burnings all around some rural part of Alabama. We were actually horrified by the discovery and suddenly realized why he was so negative towards his black hospice nurse who was otherwise kind-hearted and caring for him and the family. At its fame, a very large number of you want to keep calling me racist, telling me how much of a fuck-up I was for burning everything. We, as in my family, I was 16 at the time and had no real say in what the adults elders decided. We decided to burn all of it out of intense shame for what we discovered. We held prayer vigils through our local church for the people affected by his hatred. Had I been older, I might have taken some of the more damning photos and forwarded them to people that could have brought closure to victims. I made this post a great risk to remaining in my family as they would still see it as romanticizing his actions. To my family, simply speaking his name has done so at great risk to your standing on wills, remaining part of the family. So yes, I do feel like it's too late because the only thing I have is that my uncle was a member of the KKK for an unknown amount of time before 1950. My family has prided itself in being very inclusive towards other races. Ethnic backgrounds, my 7th generation great-grandfather was a member of the Underground Railroad. Several of my other great aunts and uncles were vocal figureheads of the civil rights movement. They acted as anyone with that much history behind them would in a moment of shock. They destroyed. Blame them if you wish, but please stop blaming me. I didn't make any decisions, and for me it's too late to report anything because I don't have any useful information, thank you. But a Timley news says, advancing similarly to this, Harry, please stop blaming me. I didn't make any decisions, and for me it's too late to report anything because I don't have any useful information on something that happened a very long time ago for me. I do sincerely apologize to anyone who sees their chances for closure going up in flames, but I can assure you that for how many other Klansmen I saw in those photos, surely some of their families have already submitted evidence after their passing. My uncle has literally been deleted from our family history, even in such detail as to remove his gravestone so that people cannot leave flowers for him. I said something in general about horses one time. My good friend just kind of shrugged and said, my uncle got effed to death by a horse. What the hell? Turns out my friend's uncle was the Mr. Hands guy from the Seattle area. My friend was like, oh yeah, there's a whole movie about it and everything. It's called Zoo. Some town called Enumclaw, Washington is where this happened. I did look it up to see what he was talking about, since he just blindsided me with the whole story. I don't really know why someone would claim such a thing if it weren't true, but perhaps he just wanted to shock me. We don't really communicate anymore due to changing jobs.
It killed me at first to try to hide things, but over time I've just gotten used to it. I used to feel like he was embarrassed or ashamed of me, but then I met his family, and I understood he was just trying to protect me. His parents are older, closer in age to my grandparents than to my own parents, and unfortunately quite close-minded, so they don't know that we're together. They just think we're housemates, and they don't know I'm trans either. Thankfully, I pass well, or this would be a much more awkward conversation. His brothers are even worse. One of them talks openly about wanting to kill all gay people and stuff like that. So there's a good reason to keep me in the closet. It's a generational thing too. I think he's a bit older than me and grew up at a time when men couldn't be open about being gay or bi, and he's had a hard time moving on from that mindset. We also work together, and he just wants to avoid the gossip, which I agree with. Thankfully, my friends and family are all open-minded and accepting of him and our relationship, so at least I don't have to hide with everyone. My parents have treated him like family since day one. He's great friends with my younger brother, and my grandparents absolutely love him. My friends get along great with him too, and he often gets invited along to our outings. I do hope someday he won't have to hide like this anymore, but until then, this is what we live with. Our 5-year anniversary is in June, and we've been living together for 3 years, so the relationship itself is definitely going well. The circumstances he's in just force us to hide it. Is it worth it? For him, yes, but if we break up at some point, I'm not doing this again for someone else. A secret relationship like this is incredibly hard on the partner who was previously out and now has to go back in the closet. And most people don't consider that. They just focus on how hard things are for the still close-knit partner.